Okay, so we're on the record. Let me just arrange this so everybody has a microphone. Let's see. Turn the buttons up. These microphones are a little bit sensitive, so I tend to put them close. Okay, so this is a continued contested case hearing in docket number 2015-261. Peter Torrano versus Shirley Mosby as member, Board of Education, Norwalk Public Schools, and Board of Education, Norwalk Public Schools. I'll note for the record that the Board of Education has actually been dismissed from the case. And that this 2015-261 is consolidated with 2015-281, Nancy Chapman versus Shirley Mosby, member, Board of Education, Norwalk Public Schools, and Board of Education, Norwalk Public Schools. And again, by motion to dismiss the Board of Education as an entity from this case, that has been granted. So we continue this case today. My name is Felicia Harmon, and I'll note for the record that the time is 1:14, and that today is tricky. Somebody give me the date. October
26th.
Thank you. October 26, 2015. And I will ask the parties who are seated at the table. I'll start with you, Ms. Chapman, to please identify themselves for the record.
Nancy Chapman from Nancy on Norwalk News website.
Torrano, Torrano.
Okay. Ms. Mosby.
Kathleen Elbergill from Beck and Elbergill representing Ms. Mosey, and I do have appearances for you in 2015-261 and 2015-281. I have provided copies to the parties.
Thank you very much. So it's Attorney Eldergill.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, so for the record, based on what transpires here today, along with what transpired back in the first hearing in these cases, I'm going to prepare a hearing officer's report. That report is going to contain suggested findings of fact and conclusions of law, along with the date and the time when the full commission will consider the written reports. So I'll have two reports. I'll have a report in 2015-261, which is Mr. Torrano's complaint, and I'll have a separate report in 2015-281, which is Mrs. Chapman's complaint. The commissioner is going to consider those written reports at the time they gather to consider them. They can accept the written reports, they can reject the written reports, and they can modify those written reports in any way they see fit at the time they do convene to consider them. We follow the Uniform Administrative Procedure Act. We are in a continued hearing position today, but we're still going to ask Mr. Torrano if there's anything he wants to add to his case, and then the respondents can present additional evidence as the case may be. And then we'll close out 2015-261, and we'll call 2015-281. And Ms. Chapman, if there's anything else you wanted to add. But I think this is a day that we need to get some evidence in the record from the respondents, which is really the most important thing of what I'm saying. All of the evidence has to get into the record today. No new evidence can come in front of the full Freedom of Information Commission. Okay, and with that, any preliminary matters in 2015-261 that I need to take up?
Okay. Attorney Harmon, I know the cases are consolidated. I know last time you accepted testimony in one case and used it in another case. With that in mind, I do have a supplemental submission for the in-camera inspection in the case of 2015-281. I believe Attorney Lindauer discussed this with you by phone. There was a document that wasn't complete
By
that was
email.
submitted to you.
By email, yes.
And I have
You know what, if I
supplemental.
can take that after the case, after we close out, I'll take that in 2015-281,
Okay.
and I'll go and I'll lock it right up when you give it to me.
Oh, okay.
'Cause
And
I'll
I
put
have
that-
I have provided a copy to Ms.
Of the
Chapman.
I think one email was not complete. Is that
That's
right?
right.
Okay, so we'll do that as soon as we close out this hearing, and I'll go in the front and give it to
Very good.
my clerk. Okay, and so what happened in 2015-261 and to some extent 2015-281, I received the records in camera. I understand there's one record in 2015-281 that needs to be supplemented. It wasn't the entire email chain, I believe. Is that right, Counselor?
That's correct.
So, and I issued an order to continue the hearing because I didn't get testimony with regard to the specific exemptions that were raised. And in particular, 1-210B1, which is preliminary drafts and notes, and 1-210B2, which is the invasion of personal privacy, I think that the other two exemptions that were indicated on the index are really not quite relevant to what we have going on here, 1-206A and 1-231. Those provisions of the Freedom of Information Act really kind of pertain more to executive session and proceedings. So what I am interested in is the B1 and the B2. So I will ask Mr. Torrano, since you don't have anything you want to tell me, and you don't need to tell me anything else, I have your testimony and your evidence from the first hearing. I'm going to pass the case to Attorney Eldergill to call a witness to substantiate the exemptions they claimed, and at the conclusion of the witness's testimony, you can ask questions if you have any. Okay? All right.
Is the respondent still under oath?
Let's take the oath. Can you stand? You don't have to, but anybody who thinks they may testify in this case, thank you. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? You think you're going to say anything today, Mr. Chairman?
Just in case.
Yeah.
Do you solemnly swear that the evidence shall give concerning the case now in question will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or under a penalty of perjury, as the case may be? Okay, so please be seated. I'll just ask you really quickly, Ms. Chapman, state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Nancy Chapman, Chapman.
And Ms. Chapman, you just took an oath, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Torrano, can you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
It's Peter Torrano, Torrano.
Mr. Torrano, you just took an oath, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and Ms. Mosby, can you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Shirley Mosby, Mosby.
And Ms. Mosby, you just took an oath, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, and with that, I will pass the case to Attorney Eldergill.
Thank you. Ms. Mosby, I have in front of you, should you need to refresh your recollection, the documents that have been submitted for in-camera review. And rather than refer to the content of these documents in my questions, I'm going to be referring to them by page number. And if you get confused about which document I'm asking about, please look over here, so we will try and keep the record as clean as possible. I'm showing you page 1 of the submission, the first document. Does this document reflect preliminary notes concerning the evaluation of a superintendent?
Yes.
This document is not a final evaluation?
No.
Are any of the comments contained in these notes reflected in a final evaluation?
No.
As far as you know, were these comments considered at all in a final evaluation?
No.
Do the comments reflected in this first page pertain to an executive session meeting of the Board of Education?
Yes.
And that executive session would have been confidential in that members of the general public are not permitted to attend, correct?
Yes.
The only people who would be entitled to see the document would be those who participated in the executive session.
Yes.
Is it your belief that the comments in this document that pertain to this particular superintendent's eligibility for employment or additional compensation?
Yes.
Does this document contain personal information and criticisms about the superintendent being evaluated?
Yes.
Is it of a personal or private nature?
Yes.
Is there information in here that pertains to the public's concern?
No.
Is it your opinion that making this document or other documents reflecting discussions from a confidential evaluation public would undermine the board's ability to have a full and frank discussion regarding the employee in question?
Yes.
If this document were circulated, would it be embarrassing to the employee who was the subject?
Yes.
Those are all the questions I have on the first document, which is page 1. Turning to the next document, Ms. Mosby, that would be pages 2 and 3. Let me just show you so you're familiar with what I'm talking about. Does this document reflect preliminary notes concerning the evaluation of the superintendent?
Yes.
And this does not reflect a final evaluation, is that correct?
No.
Are the comments contained in these notes reflected in the final evaluation?
No.
As far as you know, were these comments considered at all in a final evaluation?
No.
Do the comments reflected in this document pertain to an executive session meeting of the Board of Education?
Yes.
And that would have been a confidential session not open to the general public, correct?
Yes.
The only people that would be entitled to see the document would be those who participated in that executive session.
Yes.
Is it your belief that the comments in the document pertain to this particular superintendent's eligibility for employment or additional compensation?
Yes.
Does this document contain personal information and criticisms about the superintendent being evaluated?
Yes.
Do you find it to be of a personal and private nature?
Yes.
Does it pertain to the public concern?
No.
Would making this document reflecting confidential evaluations public undermine the board's ability to have a full and frank discussion regarding the employee in question?
Yes.
If this document were circulated, could it be embarrassing to the employee who is the subject?
Yes.
Those concludes my questions for document 2. Document 3 is a 3-page document, it's actually 2 documents, you see.
Okay.
Is this document a preliminary draft of an evaluation of the superintendent?
Yes.
Is it a final evaluation?
No.
Do the comments reflected in this document pertain to an executive session meeting of the Board of Education?
Yes.
And executive session would have been confidential in that members of the general public are not permitted to attend?
Yes.
The only people that would be entitled to see the document would be those in attendance at the executive session?
Yes.
Do the comments in this document pertain to the particular superintendent's eligibility for employment or additional compensation?
Yes.
Does it contain personal information and criticisms about the superintendent being evaluated?
Yes.
Is it of a personal or private nature?
Yes.
Does the information in here pertain to the public concern?
No.
If this document were made public, this document from a confidential session, would it undermine the board's ability to have a full and frank discussion regarding the employee in question?
Yes.
If this document were circulated, would it be embarrassing to the employee who's the subject?
Yes.
I'd like to turn next to the 4th document, which is an 8-page exhibit. Let me just take a look so you know what it is. Does this document pertain to the evaluation of a superintendent?
Yes.
Is it the final evaluation?
No.
Do the documents that does this document contain comments that pertain to the superintendent's eligibility for employment or additional compensation?
Yes.
Does it contain personal information about the superintendent being evaluated?
Yes.
Is it of a personal or private nature?
Yes.
Does the information in here pertain to the public concern?
No.
If this document were made public, would it undermine the board's ability to have a full and frank discussion regarding the employee?
Yes.
If this document were circulated, would it be embarrassing to the employee who's the subject?
Yes.
I'd like to show you the next document, the 5th document. And this is a 1-page document, if you just take a look at that. Does this document pertain to the evaluation of the superintendent?
Yes.
And is this a final evaluation?
No.
Do the comments in this document pertain to this superintendent's eligibility for employment or additional compensation?
Yes.
Does this document contain personal information about the superintendent being evaluated?
Yes.
Is it of a personal or private nature?
Yes.
Does the information pertain to the public's concern?
No.
If this document were made public, would that undermine the board's ability to have a full and frank discussion regarding the employee in question?
Yes.
If this document were circulated, would it be embarrassing to the employee who was the subject?
Yes.
Turning to the 6th document.
How many pages is that one?
1, 2, I think it's 10. It might be 11 to count because I just counted before. So I just counted.
The first one was only 1 page, is that right, Counselor?
Yes. Does this document pertain to the evaluation of a superintendent?
Yes.
Is this a final evaluation?
No.
Do the comments in this document pertain to this particular superintendent's eligibility for employment or additional compensation?
Yes.
Does it contain personal information about the superintendent being evaluated?
Yes.
Is it of a personal or private nature?
Yes.
Does the information in here pertain to the public's concern?
No.
If this document were made public, would it undermine the board's ability to have a full and frank discussion regarding the employee in question?
Yes.
And if this document were circulated, would it be embarrassing to the employee who was the subject?
Yes.
Your Honor, that's all the questions I have.
So the third document, how many pages was the third document? So I'll follow along in when I do the review again of the records.
3 pages.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for the complainant? Okay. Do you have anything else?
Not on this case, no.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Torrano.
Ms. Mosby, are you aware that there was a complaint made of racial bias and disparate treatment against 3 minority members of the Board of Education?
I think that's beyond the scope of what I asked. I only asked about these documents. I wasn't here for the last hearing, but I don't think this has anything to do with
Okay,
this.
okay. I'll let you answer. I'll overrule the objection. He says it's connected to what we just heard, but
Yes.
Am I aware of,
Are you aware of public allegations of a bias and racial discrimination against 3 particular members of the Board of Education, you being one of them?
yes,
Okay. The documents that we just read out loud, do you have any idea if I'm aware of those documents?
I'm not sure.
Okay, do you know that I've ever seen them?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you show these to anyone else, these documents? Has anyone else seen these documents that you said are from executive session and not available to anybody else?
Myself, my attorney, and Attorney Harmon.
Okay. Did you ever show them to State Representative Bruce Morris?
No,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the yes.
State Representative Bruce Morris.
Thank you.
Did you ever show them to Ms. Brenda Penn Williams?
she did not see those, she did not see those documents.
She didn't see these documents.
No.
Did you discuss these documents with her?
Those documents were part of a folder of information that would have been discussed if the NAACP would have had a meeting. Brenda Penn Williams, the leader Regis chair of the NAACP, requested a meeting to discuss these documents. She did not go through all these documents because of the fact that the meeting was not called. The board chair refused to have the meeting. And because of that, the documents were not, she did not see.
You said that she did not go through all of these documents. Did she
No.
go through any of these documents?
No, not those documents there, no.
Okay. Were any of these documents shown to the NAACP when you filed a complaint with them?
They were part of the folder. They were in the folder of documents that was documents that consisted of information from all 3 persons, the 3 people that filed the complaint. And Brenda Penn Williams, the legal regis chair, did not get the document and read it. It was there for when there was a meeting that had to take place with the board, or the board chair, so that everyone can have it at the same time.
Okay, so I can understand this. If the NAACP had opened this investigation, as you said, you would have shown these to them?
If the investigation was to be opened, it would have been, a meeting would have been called. And at that meeting, the board would have been involved. And at that point, with the board being involved, then it would have been.
so these documents weren't attached to any kind of a complaint that was filed anywhere?
The documents were there, but
Yes, sir.
the person who received the complaint did not review and see the document.
But are they lodged with another agency at this point right now?
They're lodged with no, not at this point, because the NAACP never received a copy of any of these documents.
Okay, so they weren't like, here's a complaint, 1 page, and all the documents are attached and you file the complaint somewhere?
No, the only person that have seen these documents, again, is myself, my attorney, and you, and camera. Request.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Are these the particular documents that you and others claim show disparate treatment and racial bias?
They are documents that support some of those claims.
Okay, so these are the documents you claim.
No, there's more. No, these are
There's
just
more.
some documents.
Okay, let me pick up on there's more.
Yes.
You say there's more, so there's more information that would be available to us to
They're
prove or
general
disprove your
statements
claim?
that were made.
Okay.
I'm going to object
Thank
for
you.
going beyond these documents. As you know, these are only the documents where particular exemptions are claimed. I wasn't here for the rest of the hearing, but I understood that the testimony at that hearing had to do with the broader
Commissioner Harmon, I didn't
request.
bring up the additional documents she did.
Right, my order was for Ms. Mosby to give me the records in camera that she had access to in connection with her role as a Board of Education member.
If I may,
Okay.
if I may, what I'm trying to
Okay.
point out is that I believe there are additional documents, there are additional emails, there are additional paperwork possibly that would.
Well, I think,
I don't think they've been presented to you.
well, I've seen the letters from council, the previous council said that there are additional documents for which no exemption is being claimed, so those should be disclosed. And there are additional documents that precede Ms. Mosby's employment with the Board of Education. Now, I don't think that I have the reach to get those documents. Those are emails that were created outside of her BOE involvement, so I asked her.
Just for clarification,
Right.
she's not
No,
technically
but just to
employed.
clarify, what I ordered to be given to me was
Yeah.
records that were created as part of or in conjunction with Ms. Mosby's job as a Board of Education
Well,
member.
what I was trying to say was not related to that, but you had said that she was employed by the Board of Ed. Just want to make it clear she's not technically employed, she's not an employee.
Well, as a member of the
Right,
Board
I
of
just want to make sure
Education.
that's clear,
Okay,
because she's
all right.
acting in the public's behalf, she's not a
Right.
paid employee.
Right. Sorry.
That's
I
better.
just wanted to clarify something, and maybe I just misheard what you said, but as you know, the position, Ms. Mosby's position, our position is that the documents they're seeking are not documents that were created as part of her role as a Board of Education member. So what I understood the purpose of this in-camera review was for you to look at the documents that were fell under other exemptions. It's our claim that the NAACP complaint, for example, is not something that was prepared by her in a role as a board member. Am I correctly stating it?
I think
Okay.
that what I said is very much the same as what you're
Okay.
saying. The records that I received in camera were records that members of the Board of Education have seen and discussed in connection with their role as a
That's
Board of
correct.
Education.
Yes.
So they're not records that are outside of the Board of Education environment, if you will, and there are other records I understand that Ms. Mosby's not claiming are exempt. So there are some records that are not within the Board of Education zone of a public agency,
Okay.
okay?
Right, so they're not exempt because they're not public records. I guess we're saying the same thing. Okay.
All right, Ms. Mosby, of the records that you have here that you claim are exempt because they took place in executive session, have you discussed these with anyone else at all? Has it gotten into the public, in the press, or anywhere?
No.
Okay. You positive of that, sir? Ma'am?
I have not spoken to the press.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're understanding what you're saying. Were there emails between you and other Board of Ed members that you claim show disparate and racial bias?
Again, we're going beyond these documents, I believe.
Well, it was just discussed about other paperwork that was outside of the realm that could be talked about, that would be presented to us. So my question just follows up on that.
I filed a complaint with the NAACP as an individual person, not myself and two other individuals, board members, filed a complaint with the NAACP, a private entity, my own personal individual complaint, not as a board member, but as an NAACP member and as well as an individual. I have exercised my 14th Amendment constitutional right to file a complaint, and I did that with two other board members.
Okay,
And
now
it has
I'm a little
nothing to
confused.
do with
All right.
the board. I did not file it on behalf of the Board of Education. This has never came up with the Board of Education. When the NAACP asked to have a meeting, the board chair said no. At that point, that was it, as far as.
Okay, I'm a little confused because twice during this last talk that you just gave, you said you went to the NAACP along with two other board members as board members. So I'm
No,
having a little-
not as board
Well,
members. They
that's what you
were
said.
board members.
They are board
You're
members, so they're-
taking and you're, you know what? I went myself and two other individuals who happens to be board members.
Happened to me.
Right,
Okay.
right. They happen to be board members.
Okay.
We filed, as individuals, we went to the NAACP, a local civil rights organization, and filed a complaint about treatment that was predated my time, and when I arrived on the board, that was happening. And we went there with that, and I cannot speak for those other people because they're not here, and you'll have to bring them in if you want to ask any questions to them. But the bottom line is that we went as individuals to the NAACP, filed a complaint with the NAACP, not as board members, but as individuals. And we filed a complaint, and the representative of the NAACP went to the board and asked for a meeting to discuss the complaint, and the board chair refused to meet.
Okay, so just for clarification again, so 3 individuals who happen to be board members went to the NAACP to complain about I'm not finished, ma'am.
Yes.
Went to the NAACP, I can't say it, NAACP to complain about their activities as board members, is that correct?
I'm gonna object. I really think this goes beyond what we're here for today. This is part of the underlying hearing that I thought had already taken place with respect to this complaint. I thought this was just a supplemental hearing about the documents that have some specific exemptions that you were gonna consider.
Well, ma'am, these are documents I've never seen.
Correct.
These documents that are in camera,
Right.
right?
That's right.
Right, so, I think in
But I thought at the last hearing, what we did was we kind of drew some lines in terms of what records Ms. Mosby had as a member of the Board of Education. If I go home on a Saturday and I draft an email and I send it off somewhere, and you FOI my FOI emails, you're not going to get my Saturday email. I'm not going to give that to you. It's not something I created as a result of being an attorney at FOI. It's a personal email, and I said I didn't want those emails. What I wanted and what I think I got are the records that were generated in the context of being a Board of Education member. Documents that I think we have jurisdiction over, and that's what they gave me in camera. What happened was, when I looked at the index, and I looked at the exemptions, preliminary drafts and notes, and invasion of personal privacy in particular, I didn't see that I had the evidence in the record in order to evaluate those claims of exemptions. And that's why I asked everyone to come back today. So to the extent you want to go back and do the first hearing over, I'm going to sustain the objection, but if you have questions about the testimony that was given with regard to the exemptions that are being claimed, which is why we're here today, I would ask you to ask those.
Well, I thought I was asking questions directly related to those documents as responded to by Ms. Mosby.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to ask Ms. Mosby?
I'm thinking about moving to South Carolina, I like the area.
It's nice.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. So let me just, before do you have anything else that you want to say in this one? Let me just examine a little bit, just for a few minutes, the B1 exemption, so the preliminary drafts and notes, just so I can get a sense of. So your claim is that these documents are not final documents, right? So some of the documents, without talking about the actual content of the documents, some of the documents are emails, and some of the documents are reviews, if you will. Now, some of those reviews are pretty, they're not for the, I don't know, who is the current superintendent in,
Dr. Adamowski.
okay. All right, so if
He's new.
the documents in question are documents that pertain to people that aren't currently employed, it's still your position that they're preliminary drafts and notes. Is that your position?
Yes.
And if the documents are evaluating how a previous employee of Norwalk, how they did or how they didn't do, your position is that the public doesn't have an interest in that. But I'm wondering, does the public, have an interest in maybe how someone did exceedingly well or how someone maybe fell short? And I thought maybe we could explore that a little bit, because these documents, and I know that the people to whom they pertain are not here, but it seems to me that maybe there is a little bit of public interest, as the statute says, that the public interest in withholding clearly outweighs the public interest in disclosure. Maybe I will ask maybe counsel if there's any way we can get a little bit more testimony about that, or if you want to make argument about it.
Yeah, maybe make argument because, and maybe I can ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
When, and stop me if you can't, if you can't answer it without talking about this particular.
Yeah, don't
case,
talk
because I
about what
wanna
the
get away
documents
from
say.
the content.
I just want to kind of get at the fact that, you know, if I do a good job and I get a good review, you know, maybe the public should know that. But if I'm a total mess here at FOI and I'm on, you know, being paid by the taxpayers' dollars, maybe the public should know that as well, and that my performance as an employee, it really does touch upon a matter of public concern because it's funded by taxpayer dollars. So.
Right,
and
and maybe I'll just see if I can address it via
Okay,
argument.
okay,
And then,
all right.
that may avoid the need of.
I'm going to ask them to give me some
particulars.
argument, and then maybe ask you, Mr. Torrano, if there's anything you want to say, and then we'll close this one out.
In the course of evaluating an employee, what you want to do is make sure that everybody who's involved in that process doesn't feel that they are limited in what they can say, in information they can bring up. And when you're dealing with a board that's making a decision, in the end, you're either going to have a consensus, you're going to have a majority vote, you're going to have, a majority on the board that decides, you know, we are the greater number, we are going to control what ultimately comes out. And while you want to have the people on the board discussing openly without fear or concern that something they say is going to be used in an inappropriate way, you also want this board to have an opportunity to reach a consensus about the employee and to put that consensus forward as the final evaluation. And that's one of the reasons that the FOI has a exemption for drafts, because you don't want the first thoughts. You want people to be able to look it over without feeling we can't ever put anything in writing because then it's going to come back to haunt us if we end up changing our mind. So ultimately, and I don't even know whether in this particular case, I seem to remember, and Ms. Mosby can correct me if I'm wrong, that this person ultimately resigned, so it's possible that he resigned without there being a final evaluation. But whether he did or not, whether there was a final evaluation or not, the preliminary discussion, it will be no different than me sitting and having a discussion with everyone and saying, here's what I think about this person, here's what I think their strong points or weak points are. Those notes of my feeling, and I'm bringing them to an executive session because this is a personnel matter that we're going to discuss in private before we go public. So we go public, we have a final evaluation,
And so if people, if board members knew that their notes or their emails in a preliminary discussion would be subject to disclosure, that could potentially inhibit people
Exactly.
from giving their full and frank opinion.
Right.
Is
And
that?
exactly. And you're not going to get all of that out there. Now, ultimately, a decision is made, an evaluation is given, that becomes something that follows this person around for their career. And it's important that you be able to reach that in a way that people don't feel hampered. So
let me ask you this, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I will. Attorney Eldergill, it seems to me that the B1 exemption is really the exemption that's being claimed here and not so much B2. Am I wrong?
well, this was done in executive session.
Right. So B1 is the preliminary drafts and notes, and the B2 is really the invasion, what we say here is the invasion of personal privacy. But I don't think that I have testimony at this hearing from which I can evaluate an invasion of personal privacy, because I don't think it's Ms. Mosby's, it's not her personal privacy rights at issue. Is that right?
And ordinarily, the agency, who is no longer a party to this proceeding, would be the one contacting the employee to give them notice and
Right.
give them an opportunity to object, which of course hasn't been done here because the agency is not a party. She doesn't really have the authority to, it's
Okay.
not her place to do that, if you know what I mean.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Final statements, Mr. Toronto.
I'll pass, thank you.
Okay, all right, we're gonna close it out at 1:47. And we're gonna call, let me put this. So, 2015-281. I had a couple of notes here. I think that one of the things we addressed is we're gonna take care of after the hearing, which is gonna be the filing of some of the in-camera records that were filed not, they weren't completely, all the emails weren't all in there, so we're gonna add to the in-camera filing in this case. The other issue that I had noted in 2015-281 was that previous counsel for Ms. Mosby raised an objection with, I think the complainant filed a post-hearing brief. And what I had noticed was that attached to the brief, am I trying to remember exactly, there were some links attached to your brief, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't have all of those pieces of information in my file, and I wanted to know if you had brought copies of what you had filed with your brief.
No, I did not.
Okay, all right, so, let me just see.
If I could just
Yeah, sure.
correct you there,
Sure.
there are links, there are also documents.
Links and
So I
documents,
know
right.
with our copy of the brief, we have actual documents that are attached as well.
Okay, so I think that I do have the complainant's brief. And then I have some documents, and I think there might have been, if I'm not mistaken, a link to a
Probably news-
tape or a
video.
video? Okay. So what we need to do is this, I'm gonna hand you what was stamped in, and I'll show it to council.
Yes.
What was attached to this, are these the attachments that were filed with your brief, Ms. Chapman? Because I know that the complainants had said that, because they're attached to your brief, and you certainly can attach things to your brief, but they aren't considered evidence unless they're raised at the hearing, and I actually hear if there's an objection. It's an attachment to your brief, and I'm not going to say that I won't take it and have it in the file, but it's not, is that everything that was filed with your brief?
I think so.
Okay. Is there an objection to some of the documents that are attached to the brief? And
Yes.
if so, can you tell me, did you want the commission to consider these attachments as evidence?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So let's do it one by one, shall
Sure.
we? And I'll do it so you can see, because I know you don't have a copy. So the brief is really the one-page document dated June 22nd, 2015. Is that right? Which is the first page.
No, that's not me. That's from somebody else.
Oh, sorry. Well, sorry.
The brief is more like 3 pages.
Okay. This is your brief?
Yeah, I believe that's what it is.
This is your brief. Okay, I'm sorry. So the brief is,
Yes.
okay, and this is your brief, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So the brief is a legal argument, and that is in the record. But attached to the brief, I have 2 documents. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So these are the documents, Ms. Chapman, that you would like me to consider as evidence. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the documents that were attached to the brief.
Okay, so we're not going to go into the links, they're just going to be mentioned in the brief. I
Well,
assume.
the links had the video, which had some comments that I thought substantiated my
Okay.
feeling that the NAACP had come, at least with Ms. Mosby's knowledge. And
To the meeting?
possibly, yes.
Yeah, that's not really something I need, though, to decide whether the documents at issue are exempt or not. So I don't think I need that to decide these. But these 2 documents, is there any objection to these coming in as
Yes, and
evidence?
I want to explain what the
Okay,
objections were.
so let's see what the objections are.
The first document is a letter that Ms. Mosby sent to the Board of Education dated June 22nd, 2015, in which Ms. Mosby informs the board members that she has been the subject of 3 FOI complaints and that she's entitled to indemnification by the Norwalk Board of Education to cover her costs in defending against those complaints under Section 10-235 of the General Statutes. As you know, it's our position that most, if not all, of the documents sought, well, most of the documents sought are documents that have nothing to do with Ms. Mosby's status as a board member. And I believe the argument that they're trying to make, that the complainant is trying to make is, well, this refutes your argument because here she is seeking indemnification as a board member under the statute. So the point I wanted to make to you is that indemnification under the statute, whether she's entitled to indemnification under the statute, has nothing to do with whether in the end this commission decides that the documents were documents that are public records. If you are a public official and you are accused even if the accusation turns out to be incorrect, even if it turns out that what you did has nothing to do with your status as a board member, the reason you are being brought in and under a Freedom of Information complaint is because you're a board member. So it's not relevant to the claim and shouldn't be considered for that reason.
Why would I need, so for me, the issue for me is the documents that have been requested and that have been submitted to me for an in-camera review, and now they're being claimed exempt. And we've heard some testimony in Mr. Torrano's case about why certain exemptions apply to the records. I have to examine the records, listen to the evidence with regard to the claimed exemptions, and then make a determination for my commission as to whether I think the records are exempt. That's the issue that I'm called upon to write up. How does this document, and if you're confused about that statement, I can try.
Well, that's the subject of this hearing, but the complaint is regarding all of the evidence, and she's claiming that the evidence was not collected in her capacity as a board member, and yet you can see that she's claiming that it's in her capacity as a board member when she's requesting the board to pay for her lawyer.
But she's asking the board to indemnify her for having to come here, is that right?
Correct.
So how does that help me decide if the records that have been given to me in camera are exempt or not exempt?
I don't think it does. I think it goes toward the basic concept that the complaint was made not in her function as a board member. And she's using evidence that she has as a board member to make the complaint.
Okay, but it doesn't help me decide whether the records that have been given to me in camera
No.
are exempt or not.
No.
Okay, so I don't need this. And then the picture. Is that the other document that was attached?
My argument here is that the Freedom of Information Act law was made for ordinary citizens to try to get information from public officials. You know, I think I did not come here as a lawyer expecting to make a legal argument, and I was looking for a little leeway, basically. I mean, as a lawyer, I probably would have known to say, I don't want to finish this hearing that date, that I think we should continue it because I need some time to consider what was said. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm just an ordinary citizen. And I don't have a $4,000 taxpayer-funded lawyer to
But what is it that you would want? Why would you want to have continued the hearing?
Because she said things that I would like to dispute, and I have evidence that I think disputes them.
But from my perspective, the request was for certain records, and those records have now been given to me under seal, if you will, right? And I've looked at them, the in-camera records.
Yeah,
So,
but there are other records too. It's not just about the in-camera records.
well, I thought that my order for an in-camera submission was records that were created in the context of her position as a Board of Education member. I don't think I have jurisdiction over records that she created on a Saturday at home.
Yeah, well, but
I didn't say I said that the claims are racist against her.
Right.
right, as a Board
Right.
of Education member, she's
She
complaining
could have done that standing on the street
conduct of
corner
the
somewhere. It
board.
had nothing to do with her saying anything on the board.
It's,
But she's telling me that the records that I don't have in camera were records that were created outside the context of her job as a citizen. So I don't know that we can, what I see as my role is to look at the records I've been given in camera and determine if they're exempt or not. And they've raised several sections of the FOI Act.
We had no control over the people who give it to you on camera. We didn't select
even know
those
what they
people who
are.
give it to you. We just came to you and said that a citizen, we were told that there was a claim of bias and racism against her,
Right.
and she had proof of it. We simply asked for the proof. We have no idea what she gave you on camera because we were entitled to see it.
Right.
You know, and I agree with Ms. Chapman. I mean, I didn't come up here expecting to have to act as an attorney. I thought we were going to come here and say what our concern was. I didn't know I had to cross-examine. I didn't know I needed to bring
Well, you don't
evidence.
have to. I mean, you don't have to
I
because
know
I'm
you
going to
don't.
ask the questions that I need answers to.
Okay, well, I guess all I'm saying is, and it's too late, and we're way into the process, but I wish this had been explained to us, and I suppose to other people who come before the commission as well, in a little more detail, because I would have hired an attorney out of my own pocket if I had to make sure we were properly represented, but we didn't know that. We thought we were going to simply come here, give our side of it, and that was it.
Well, this is about as informal a proceeding as it gets. I mean,
Not when I
here's
have to cross-examine.
hearsay testimony is accepted. I mean, this is a citizens' commission, but
Mhm.
it's a hearing. I mean, you know, people are sworn in and evidence is given, and I mean, to the extent that you think the process is too formalistic? I don't know what to
No,
say
I
because
just-
compared to a court proceeding, this is very relaxed.
I could understand the process if it was a little more clearly told to us in advance. I had no idea, absolutely no idea, that I would have to come up and cross-examine and make sure that I ask in the proper way and it had to be responded to in the proper way. I'm not a studied attorney. I don't know these things. So we came up here kind of we came up here expecting to just tell you what our concerns were and just asking for
Well, that's all you really
information.
have to do. You made a request for records, and the burden of proof passes to the respondents to prove that the records that you
We asked for
wanted,
all the records.
right.
Anything having to do with her claim of racial bias or disparate treatment, anything. Now, what you got in camera is something I don't even know if I ever asked for anything like that. I have no idea what they're talking about with what went on with the hiring process of a superintendent. That came out of the blue for me. We simply want to know, what is it that Ms. Mosby claims was disparate treatment, and what proof does she have, as was stated by other people, including some of the people I mentioned when I brought up the names before. And that's all we expected. I'm sorry, but and we're way
Okay.
beyond that now, and I understand that. but-
Okay. All
I
right.
just want to respond to the actual exhibit, which I think is where your question started, if I might.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, I just want to say that this commission obviously has limited jurisdiction and can only adjudicate claims about public records. So what people might want to know about what a particular individual says at any given time, that's really, so it goes. In any case, the other piece of evidence that they want to introduce, which again I claim has no relevance to the issues before you, there's a photograph of the Board of Education meeting showing NAACP members waiting for that meeting to begin. I think there's been testimony from Ms. Mosby that what the NAACP wanted to have happen was to have the Board of Education and the chairman respond to this, have a meeting about this complaint, and he said, no, I'm not going to have a meeting. So I don't really see why this is in dispute. There's already been testimony that that's how this whole complaint came up. And the fact is, there was no public meeting because he said no, and that was the end of it. So documents that may have been made public may have become part of a public proceeding weren't, and I just don't see the relevance of the
There's so much
photo.
more to
Can I
that.
do
than
that?
what they said.
Your case is actually closed, and I just
I'm
called
kinda chatty.
2015,
Okay.
right. Sure, yes.
The point is that Ms. Lindauer made a point of asking Ms. Mosby whether or not she had requested the NAACP to come to the Board of Ed. Now, I know from experience that the NAACP meeting is on the same night, and it continues while the Board of Ed meeting is going on, but they all walked in at the same time as Ms. Mosby. So if Ms. Lindauer felt that was a need to make a point about that, in retrospect, as a layman, not a lawyer thinking this at the time, but I think that kind of calls that into question. They all showed up at the same time. She did not look, I'm testifying, she did not look surprised. If that is an important point to make, I'm disputing it.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna, the brief is filed, the exhibits are attached to the brief. We're gonna leave them as part of the brief, and I will keep it in the file, okay?
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
you're welcome. Is there anything else you want to tell me?
No, but I'd like to ask Ms. Mosby some questions.
Okay, so the testimony that we just heard with regard to the records that were submitted in camera and the testimony we heard in Mr. Torrano's case, can that testimony with regard to the documents, can that be incorporated into this
Yes.
case so we don't need to repeat it
Yes.
again?
Thank
Okay,
you. Yes.
that's good. So the floor is yours. You have a question.
Did the mayor ask you to meet?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Did the
I
mayor
just-
ask you to meet?
Again, objection, it's got nothing to do with the documents.
Actually, I think it does. She's saying that this ended when the Board of Education chairman would not meet, but the mayor keeps saying that he tried to get them together. And
Okay. Can you answer that? I'm gonna overrule the objection.
The only problem, if I answer, I'm not sure what the relevance of it to this case at this point, because as you know, there is an election going on, and I don't want to sit here and be part of whatever party.
So did the mayor ask her
to meet with the Board of Education chairman. And I'm not
In what-
advocating
in
for
what
one
context,
mayoral
though?
candidate or another. I think it's relevant to the case.
relevant to the case? To
She's made an assertion that this ended when Mike Lyons would not meet. The mayor has said over and over again that he tried to get them together.
What does that have to do with our Freedom of Information case? It's
Right.
not
Well,
it's not a political
The
hearing.
problem-
my
the-
question.
The problem is that it doesn't help me decide whether the records that have been given to me in camera are exempt or not. It's not a question that's gonna help me make a determination as to whether.
Well, I do have a point I'm trying to get to.
Okay, all right, can you answer the question? She's trying to connect it to something. I'm gonna give her some, did the mayor ask you to meet with the Board of Education in connection with the?
With anyone, as I understand, he tried to get Mike Lyons together. No, he did not.
No.
Okay.
I didn't want to make this about politics.
If,
You're not asking me?
Mr. Torrano, your case is closed.
Or-
Okay, so, yeah, that'd be better probably, because it's like two against one for a minute
It's not
here.
about politics.
All right, thank you.
if the matter ended when Mike Lyons wouldn't meet, then why did you collect evidence in a folder?
Again, same objection, I just don't understand, these questions have nothing to do with the issue that we're here before you on. I mean, she's, to gather information about some political agenda in town is really not what this commission is about. It's about, should these records be disclosed?
I mean, I have the records in camera that I think are the records that you requested in your FOI request. I know
Yeah.
you, and so my job now is to determine whether they should be publicly disclosed or whether they're exempt. They're public records, but are they public records that can be disclosed, or are they exempt public records? That's not something you have to do, that's something I have to do. And what I wanted the complainant to do, the respondent to do, is to give me evidence in the record that supported her claim of exemption. Now, her claim of exemption is preliminary drafts and notes, that these documents are not final documents, and that there's some invasion of personal privacy exemptions in these documents. Is there any question with regard to the testimony that Ms. Mosby?
I'm just trying to understand, if the documents aren't public, then why were they collected? It would imply to me that the intention was to make them public.
Well, they're public records. I think clearly what I have been given in camera are public records. But are they exempt or not? There's a claim of exemption. I know you keep kind of frowning at me
Yeah.
and turning your head a little bit.
I wish I had a lawyer.
And if something is not cleared, well, I mean, it's my job to go and now take the law and take the testimony and determine whether the records can be disclosed or not. But the only testimony that I really need to do that is testimony with regard to the records that I've been given in camera, the claims of exemption. And I know, people come here all the time, and we do like to say that we're a citizens commission, and I mean, it seems like for some reason this process has been very rigorous and very confusing. I mean, you were done when you said, I made a request and I didn't get the records. You could rest your case with that, because now the burden shifts to the respondents to tell me why not. And it really isn't up to the complainant, other than to establish that a request has been made, and you did that by giving it to me as evidence and saying that I received nothing in response. Your burden as a complainant is over. My attention focuses to the respondents at that point, for them to tell me, what are the records and why didn't you disclose them? And what they did was they gave me the records to show me what are the records, and now today is to tell me why didn't you disclose them. It really isn't up to the complainant anymore once they establish a prima facie case that a complaint has been made and nothing has been, a request has been made and nothing has been disclosed in response to that request. That's all you had to do, and you did it. Is there anything else that I need in this case?
Other
Okay.
than the supplemental.
Yes, supplemental. Okay, so at 2:07, we're gonna close it out. And I'm gonna take the additional records from you, and I will just take them and I will, you disclose the index to the,
Yes,
so
I
is
did.
this gonna supersede?
No, this is just for Chapman. I think that the Mr. Torrano's was fine. It was just for the
Okay,
Chapman.
so I'm gonna add these to the in-camera records
Yes,
that I've already
exactly.
left.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna go off the record at 2:07. Thank you.